In this tutorial, we're going to cover how to create a Luminaire project or a Luminaire in Revit. First thing to do is you'll need to start a new family, and this will be a generic model. Okay, so the first family that you create will be a metric generic model. Okay, so you're going to go and find the metric generic model, and you're going to open this up. Okay, if you've done an AutoCAD drawing, I'm going to use that AutoCAD drawing as a reference. Okay, there are some limitations to modeling in Revit just because you've got a limitation in terms of size of elements. Okay, but we should be able to do this Luminaire quite straightforward and easy. And you'll notice that all the commands that we had when we were modeling in AutoCAD are here. Same type of tools. Okay. Alright, so all that we're going to do is we're going to go and insert our lamp drawing. So CAD, we're going to import our lamp drawing. Okay, so just go and find where you've worked on that. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go and grab this with my G drive. Okay, I'm going to go and find my lamp drawing. Okay, let's go and find that quickly. Okay. I'm going to go and find my lamp drawing. I'm simply going to open this. And if you've worked around the origin correctly, it should come in quite seamlessly. Okay, now change your scale down to 1:1 in this instance. Remember, this is an AutoCAD file. We're going to delete it when we don't need it anymore. Okay, so let's just move this information. Okay, let's move this to the origin. Okay, we can duplicate this object again and again and again. Okay. Now, one thing to remember, let me just explain this. Let's delete this again. Let's say insert, import CAD. We're going to bring this back again, but we're going to use current view only, okay? Because we want to bring this in as a flat image and it doesn't have any 3D characteristics. So this current view only, and I'm going to simply do that again. Now, this allows me to copy and paste it in my different views. Okay, sometimes you might have to rotate it. But if I went to front view, it means that if I went from here, Control C, and I go to front view, I can now paste this object back. Okay, typically it should bring these back in 2D. Okay, I see that that has not worked, which is a shame. It's brought this back in. I'll switch that off. You want this not to work on the plane. Okay, but you can associate these two different work planes. So I'm going to pick a plane. So sometimes you can bring these to work with different planes. Okay, so let's get rid of that. Okay, drawn foreground. Okay, you can bring these objects in. So if I went to front view, insert, import CAD, again, keep this as flat. Okay, place, we're telling this to come into the view. There we go. All right, so that's all I need to do. So I've got a front view and I've got a top view of it. Okay, now let's move this to the correct location. I'm going to move this to the center. Okay, we're going to use our front view a lot more to do this. So in our front view, I'm going to use the section view. I'm going to move this around the center. I'll put the bottom or the top of this object around this point over here. This doesn't really matter. It's just as long as you've got a reference plane to work with around this level. Okay, so let's move this information, unpin that, and I'm going to move this information. So I'm going to use my origin around here. If the line weights are very thick, just change this 1:1 and it'll change. Okay, now we're going to move this information. So I'm going to use this point as my origin. So I'm going to move this. So for what we're doing here, this doesn't really matter. We can move this up or down. Actually, I might just move this up. Just makes more sense. So I'm going to move this information from here to this reference plane. Now this is important. Remember where the reference planes are. Okay, here we've got the situation where we've got a level over. So just remember, you'll need to keep making sure that you select the reference plane to work with. Okay, but I'm happy with this. All right. So with Revit, which is quite straightforward and easy, we're going to go and create some objects in here. But before I go ahead and do that, I need to go and add some object styles to this. Okay, so meaning it's like layers. So here I'm going to create a wire. a wire layer. I'm going to make all of these quite thin. So line weight 2, when we cut, we make it 3. Okay, new, I'm going to call this bulb. Okay, again, 2, and this will be glass, so make this 1 and make this 2. New, I'm going to call this fitting. Okay, this I'm going to make 2 and 3 as well. So it just means when you cut this object, it will cut in line weight 3, and when you look at it, it will be line weight 2. Apply. Okay, now that I've got this object in place and I've got a reference plane which will be my center. These reference planes, you can see they work as construction lines. They never print. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and create some revolves. I'm going to create a revolve. Okay, when you're creating a revolve, it's always going to ask you axis or bounding objects. So bounding objects first. Create a rectangle. This will be pretty straightforward. It should snap onto these objects. Now I can use a pick line tool, but I'm just going to use a circle tool for this. And it will also snap to the center. Snap C, snap center. That's how you switch it on to snap center. So likewise, snap center. Okay, snap center. Okay, so all of these objects are going to get revolved. So pick axis. Now I need to draw an axis, or you pick a line. So I'm going to use this as a tool. Now if I finish the command, now if I go to 3D view, you'll notice I would have these revolves. Okay, just switch this down to 1 to 2. Now you need to put these objects, when you create them, you need to put them on the correct category. So here you need to go and assign this correct subcategory, and that's going to be wire. Just means if you cut a section through this, or you do something with this object, it will actually cut this object up correctly. Okay, great. So I've got my first line in place. Okay, and you can see this is fairly quick. Likewise, I'm going to use my bulb now. So I'm going to go and create, I'm going to use another revolve. Now I can simply use my light bulb. So here, just draw some line work. You can also, what I like about this option is you can use a pick line tool. What it'll do, it'll actually pick lines from the AutoCAD file. And that's all I wanted to do. And you've got all the same commands like trim, like you had in AutoCAD. A lot of those commands will be in here. Okay, and now you just need to close this off. It has to be a closed object. I'm happy with that. Okay, remember this is subcategory, this will be bulb. Okay, it's like a layer. Now I'm going to use pick axis tool, and now I'm going to use the pick axis tool again, and I'm going to use my reference plane and finish my command. Now if I go to 3D view, there's my light bulb. Okay, so there we go. That's on bulb subcategory. Perfect. Front view. So what I like about this is because it's set up to work in 3D, you can keep jumping back and forth. Okay, so I'm going to create a revolve again. Okay, now I'm going to use pick line tool. So I'm going to pick line, that 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 line, and that line, and that line. Okay, all right, so let's create another bit of line work down here. Just remember this has to be a closed set of loops or a closed set of line work. So here we'll need to use a trim tool to trim the information we don't need. Okay, if you've got a situation where that's happened, you need to use the split line tool, split element. Now you can use the trim command. Trim that with that, trim that with that. Okay, you're going to trim that with that bit of line work over there, and then trim that bit of line work with this curve. That's worked. Trim that with that. Okay, now if you click on one bit of line work and you use tab, these should all be closed. And I can see this bit of line work is not closed yet, so this wouldn't work in essence. So you'll need to make sure that this line work is closed, otherwise this won't create a, so this and that need to be trimmed. Okay, so this is a bit tight, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this back to there. I'm going to get rid of that bit of line work, and I'm just going to use a trim tool. I want to trim these objects together, and now if I press tab, they should all be open, and you can switch off your line weights over here just to make sure. They all need to be open hollow nodes. If there's a solid node, it won't revolve. Okay, pick axis tool. I'm going to use pick line tool. Done. And finish. In 3D view, I need to change that object to my, this needs to be my fittings. Remember, not bulb, this needs to be fitting. Okay, all right. Now, we're 80% done. Okay, we've got a bulb, we've got this, and we've got this. Now we need to create those side elements. Okay, this is pretty straightforward as well. We need to create a sweep. Okay, and we'll need an object to go along that. So this works slightly differently. You're going to use the sweep tool, and I'm going to pick a series of lines. Undo. I'm going to say sketch path, and I'm going to use a pick line tool. I'm going to pick this line, and this curve over here. Okay, I'm going to use the trim tool. Split first, split the circle, and you're going to use a trim command. Trim that with that, and trim that with that. Okay, now we've got a path. Now you'll see, if you go to 3D view, it's giving you a plane on which to work. So you have to work around this plane. I'm going to go and create a circle here, and the radius was 2.5, 2.5. Okay, that's incorrect. It should be working on the plane. So let's get rid of that object. So here we need to go to modify, so let's close this. No. Okay, I need to draw on this object. It should be working on that plane. That's very interesting. So what you can do is, so if you go here, and you're going to go and say, viewer, work plane. So what this will do, it'll show me the work plane, and I need to change that work plane. I need to set that, pick plane, and I might have to pick this plane of the sweep. So I'm happy with that. All right. Sorry, my apologies. What I should have done was finish that sweep command. Now I must go and edit profile. Now it'll allow me to draw a circle on the correct plane. So here, if I draw a circle, it will be working on this plane. So this circle needs to be 2.5, and I'm going to move the circle, move this from here, this intersection, so where this quadrant meets, I need to move it from there to where the center of this circle is starting. So it needs to move there in essence, okay, because it needs to follow that sweep. If I finish my command now, and I go finish, you'll notice now that that's worked really well. Okay, great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this value. I'm going to select this object and make sure that subcategory that sits on Y. Okay. Now, in the Y subcategory, okay, so once you've got that, all that we need to do now is we need to use the revolve tool. So we'll need to go to this view. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to revolve. So now that we've created one of the legs, we need to use the array tool to array this object. So here's my object that I have. What you can do is you can select an AutoCAD file. You can use these glasses icon, and you can actually hide these elements. So hide elements. So now you can see we can use the array tool. So if I click on array, we're going to use the polar array, and it's specifying a place point. So we must specify the center over here. Now, if I array these objects in this direction, so I'm going to say 360. This often doesn't work as well. Let's just see. It's angle at 60 degrees. So here we need to specify 180 divided by 3. Okay, undo. Let's do that again. Sorry. Let's hide that, hide element. Okay. So here we're going to use the array tool. Specify center of rotation over here. Click from there to there, and it should divide this by 3. Okay, array. Oh, sorry, last. That was my apologies. Place center. Now there's all these little check boxes that you got to remember. So from there to there. So that'll be my last, and you're going to divide it by 3. Okay, so we're going to divide it by 3. Let's make it 4 in this instance. Correct. And now what I can simply do is I can grab these two objects, grab these two. So select all of these, select all instances, because if you array an object, it makes them a group. So select all of these instances in view, and I'm going to explode them all, ungroup. And all I'm going to simply do is grab these two objects and I'm going to mirror them. So use the mirror tool and I'm going to mirror them around this object over here. So if I go to my 3D view now you can see it's created my Luminaire pretty well. The last thing we've got to do now to make this work and look correct is just assign the correct materials. So if we go to realistic, you'll notice that there's no materials assigned to these. Okay, so working with materials is a bit tricky, but this is the quickest. Here's a quick workaround on how to go about doing this. Okay, you're going to go to manage, you're going to go to materials. Okay, by default we're going to have some basic materials here already. So I'll need to add some in, but I'm going to use this. So I'm going to select this part of my light bulb, and I'm going to change that material. So when you select an object in 3D view, it allows you to assign materials. Okay, so here I'm going to use glass for the bulb. Okay, and you'll see that would have changed. Now, for this Y information, I need to change that as well. Here I'm going to go and load some materials. I'm going to go and find some standard materials that we can use in our project. Okay, so if you see at the bottom here, you've got a whole list. Duplicate, you can create a new material. There's also a library. So open existing library. There's usually libraries sometimes that you can go and access. Okay, but you do have a materials, you've got an assets library here that you can start using. Okay, so you can start using these objects. I go to appearance library and I go to metal. Here I've got some already, so if I double click and I add these materials in, so it's not going to work that way, so let's just remove that. So let's remove this appearance. Let's undo. Apologies. Okay, so we didn't have quite an extensive library. Okay, so here we might have to try and find some systems, but there's none here. You can see there's nothing in here, so we're going to have to go and find some materials here. Okay, here you can get a list of materials. So here we've got a whole list that we can really use, which I'm going to start using. Okay, so here, just some basic ones. I'm just going to use, I'm going to add this material into my project. Okay, so if I go to all, you'll notice it's added my anodized. Okay, so I've got that. So that's what I'm going to use for my, but it's not going to be a comprehensive list, so there's going to be quite a few things missing. I'm just going to use copper as well. I'm going to double click that and add that to my project. It's just for the sake of creating a basic model. Okay, we just want to assign materials. We can go and change the materials later on in the project. But you can see it's quite a comprehensive list. Okay, let's see if there is brass. Sometimes there will be brass. Okay, so you must just look carefully through these. Okay, sometimes there are good materials in here, but it's enough to start with. Bronze. I'll use bronze for this. Let's put bronze in. Okay. Now, I'm going to select this object over here, and I'm going to go and assign the bronze. Okay, let's go and find those materials that we've added. Okay, we should have added some more over here. Why aren't they in here? Okay, here you see I'm adding metal. Let's go and find bronze. It should have added it. I don't think I applied, so that was my mistake. Okay, so let's go and see bronze. Yeah, brass. Add that layer, press apply. Okay, I'm going to make that my layer. Press OK. Now, if I go to, these won't look, sometimes you'll see they'll have like a dull shine to them, but that is brass. Okay. Now I'm going to select all of this information, select all of those objects. So let's select the rest of the Y information. I'm going to change that now. So go to materials. Here again, you can go to home. You can go and add a lot of these materials over here. So go and find metal. So these categories that you can search. So if you click on home, you go AEC materials and you go to metal. I'm going to use an ionized ore. Let's just find a powder coated. Okay, just find a material that will work for you. Okay, so I'm going to use, I'll use this dark gray. Press apply. Okay. Now if I select this object, now you can see satin dark gray. Okay, so now it's assigned the materials that I wanted. Okay, Now that I've created my light fitting, the next thing you need to do is remove these AutoCAD files. If you don't, they're going to cause havoc later on. So let's go to front view, remove this file. Okay. Now you can see in 3D view, if I switch on shaded, here you can see I've got my Luminaire. Okay, fantastic. Save this. So they save this as a family. So you're going to say save as family, and you're going to call this light generic gen. Light gen. So this is my genetic light. Okay. Now, before you can use this in the project, I'm going to open up a previous project that I created. I'm going to open up my light room. So I've got a light room that I want to go and open. Okay, light render. I'm going to open this project. Okay. Now, in one of my previous videos, I'd set up a light here. So what we need to do now is we need to create a new family, and we need to make this a light fitting. So go and find light fitting. Light fixture, open. Okay. Now this is where it does get a little complicated. On the front view, remember we need to add a dimension tying these together. So you need to go to annotate, align dimension. I'm going to create a dimension over here. And I'm going to assign a parameter, so collect the dimension, and I'm going to assign the default elevation to this, and I'm going to make it an instance parameter so I can change it in the project. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is we need to bring in that other light family that we created. So this is my Luminaire that I've created. So in this family, this light gen, okay, if you've got a lot of tabs open at the top, close inactive, so when you click, you know what project you're working in. Okay, so this is my light family, so I need to bring this object, so load into project. I need to load that into family 2 because that's going to become my light family. And I can just simply click around the middle. Okay, now if I go back to my front view, you'll notice now I've got a family within a family. Okay, so we'll need to do some setting up here and change some information. Okay, all right, now that I've got this in, I'm going to go and save this quickly. File, save as family. Okay, I'm going to change this to light 2, light fitting 2. It's going to have different materials, and it's got a family within a family. Okay, so now I'm going to move this object to the top here. Now, we need to use our dimensions again from here. Now, with this family, you'll find that it'll have a point on which it will work around. So this is where you need to be careful. You need to pick the right points to work around. Okay, so in this view, just remember if you go back to this light fitting, we need to go to front view because technically I use this. Now this is a catch. You'll need to convert this to weak reference because I need to lock onto it. Okay, that's important. You're going to load this back into the project. You're going to go into light fitting 2 and you're going to tell it to refresh, override existing parameters. That's important. Okay. Well, I'll go to front view. What it allows me to do now, because I've changed this, you'll notice that it will snap onto that reference. You need to move this to the correct level above where the light source is going to work well. And I'm going to leave that just like that. I'm going to lock this dimension. All that I'm doing, it just ensures now if I move this up and down, that this will work with that light fitting. Okay, fantastic. I've got my light fitting 2 and I'm going to save. Just remember to change the settings of your light bulb. So here you can make this a down light only, so it will only reflect down. That's totally up to you, but in this instance I'll just show you the difference. Here we're going to change this. So remember the efficiency. So we want the watts. So the watts, remember it's the 30 watts. It's going to be it's not the actual watts of the light bulb, it's equivalent wattage times its radiance. Okay, it's efficiency. So 200 lumen. Okay, press OK. Fantastic, apply. And you're going to load this now into my 3D light rendering. Okay, so into the project file. Yes. Now, if you look, now it's bringing in this light on the ground floor. Now I've got two light fittings in here. And remember, I need to change this. We've set this up. So here, to 100 from ground floor. So here I've got two different light luminaires. Okay, so the one came in from AutoCAD, and you see the materials are slightly different. Now if I create a rendering, so once again you can create a rendering. So I'm going to go and create a rendering of this. Okay, remember it opens up the rendering dialog box, and I'm going to simply click render to render the scene. I've set it on high, and now I'm going to have two lights in here. So in my previous project I only had one, so we're going to have a look at the render. Okay, this will take a bit of time. Okay, so once the render is created, you can just save to project, and then if you go to the view, you can view the render. Now you can see we had two light bulbs in. The one worked differently because it only spilled the light down from the top, so you don't get that weird effect on top of the, but you can see it does a really good job, and the one's reflecting the other light. So Revit does a fantastic job at rendering this correctly. Okay,